Good evening, I'm Hafiz Marzukhi. Our top stories for tonight. Trump announces trade deal with Japan, and Indonesia has agreed to remove tariffs on more than 99% of US goods exported to the country in return for US lowering tariffs on their products. More coming up on AWANI International. US President Donald Trump has announced a trade deal with Japan, imposing 15% tariffs on Japanese exports, including autos. He also says Japan would invest $550 billion in the US, with America receiving 90% of the profits. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba said that the investment includes loans and guarantees from government-affiliated institutions to help Japanese firms build supply chains in key sectors like pharmaceuticals and semiconductors. According to the Trump administration, Japan will also boost imports of US agricultural products, including rice. However, Ishiba emphasized that the deal does not compromise Japanese agriculture. The announcement also sent Japan's benchmark Nikkei index soaring nearly 4% to a one-year high, led by automakers Toyota surged over 14%, while Honda jumped nearly 11%. Earlier this month, Trump threatened to impose 25% tariffs on Japan starting August 1st. Bilateral trade reached nearly $230 billion in 2024, with Japan holding a $70 billion surplus. According to US Census Bureau data, Japan remains the US' fifth largest goods trading partner. Meanwhile, Ishiba is also facing party pressure to step down after a heavy election loss. Now closer to ASEAN, Indonesia has agreed to remove tariffs on more than 99% of US goods exported to the country. In return, the US will lower its tariffs on Indonesian products from 32% to 19%. Jakarta has also committed to scrapping all non-tariff barriers faced by American firms. It will also drop data tariffs, ease export restrictions, and accept US vehicle safety standards. The deal is seen as a win for American agriculture, automotive and tech industries by reopening market access and reducing trade friction. The full terms of the deal, which was first announced on July 15th, is expected to be finalized soon. Indonesia is one of 4 countries that have struck interim trade deals with the Trump administration alongside Japan, Vietnam and the UK. We have more after the break. Stay tuned.
Di dalam setiap berita yang dibawa, konteks amat penting. Kami sentiasa membawakan yang tergempar dan terkini. Pastikan Astro AWANI menjadi pilihan anda, tidak kira di mana sahaja anda berada.
UN officials expresses regret over the US decision to withdraw from the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, otherwise known as UNESCO. This is after Washington announces it will leave the UN Cultural Agency by the end of 2026, just 2 years after rejoining.
The US State Department said the exit was due to UNESCO's push for what it called woke, divisive and cultural agendas. It cited UNESCO's decision to admit Palestine as a member state, calling it contrary to US policy and promotes anti-Israel rhetoric. UNESCO Director General Audrey Azoulay said she regretted the move, but it was expected and that the agency had prepared. She noted the withdrawal would have limited impact on US-funded programs, adding that the agency received only 8% of its budget from Washington after having diversified funding resources. This marks the third US withdrawal from UNESCO and the second under President Donald Trump. UNESCO is best known for designating World Heritage Sites, with 26 listed in the US, including the Grand Canyon and the Statue of Liberty.
A group representing Ford, Stellantis and General Motors is raising concerns over America's latest trade deal with Japan, which will cut auto imports from the country to 15%. The American Automotive Policy Council says it is still reviewing the deal, warning that it could hurt US car makers and auto workers.
It said any agreement that gives lower tariffs to Japanese cars with little to no US content while imposing higher tariffs on North American vehicles with more local content was a bad deal. This is while President Donald Trump threatens to hike tariffs on Mexico to 30% and Canada 35% on August 1st. General Motors has said its second quarter earnings fell by $1.1 billion due to tariffs and expects the hit to be worse in the next quarter. Stellantis also warned of more impact from the US tariffs in the second half of 2025. The company says Trump's policies have already cost it $352 million, forcing reductions in vehicle shipments and production levels.
US President Donald Trump has imposed a new 19% tariff on imports from the Philippines, while US goods will pay zero tariffs in return. The announcement came shortly after Trump's meeting with Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. at the White House.
In a Truth Social post, Trump said that the Philippines is going open market with the US. The new tariff is just below the 20% rate Trump threatened earlier this month, but higher than the 17% set in April under his reciprocal tariff policy. It matches the rate imposed on Indonesia and is slightly lower than Vietnam's 20%. Marcos is the first Southeast Asian leader to meet Trump in his second term. Last year, the US posted a trade deficit of nearly $5 billion with the Philippines, out of a total bilateral goods trade valued at $23.5 billion. Meanwhile, Trump also said the two allies, marking 80 years of diplomatic ties next year, would strengthen military cooperation, but gave no details.
US President Donald Trump has threatened import restrictions to pressure foreign drug suppliers to lower prices. Speaking at the White House, he vows to cut prescription costs and warns pharmaceutical companies that face a lot of problems if they didn't comply.
We're going to get the drug prices down, not 30 or 40%, which would be great, not 50 or 60, no. We're going to get them down 1,000%, 600%. 500%, 1,500%, numbers that are not even thought to be achievable because I've used a certain talent that I have and convinced the drug companies that you have no choice. The drug companies were selling drugs, same company, in Europe and other places, based on what Europe told them to sell them at. And they said, let America pick up the difference, and I wouldn't let it happen. I thought it was great, but then
His comments come over a month after signing an executive order in June, directing drug makers to align US prices with those in other countries. The order gave companies a month to meet price targets or face regulatory action or import measures. Last week, Trump said he may impose tariffs on pharmaceuticals by August 1st, warning of tariffs up to 200% on drug imports within a year.
More than 108 agencies, including Doctors Without Borders and Save the Children, have sounded the alarm of a mass diversion spreading across Gaza. In a joint statement, they accuse Israel of blocking the distribution of food inside the enclave.
The Palestinian Health Ministry has reported dozens of deaths in recent days due to malnutrition and starvation. While Israel has acknowledged a significant drop in supplies, it insists that crucial aid is already inside Gaza, waiting to be delivered to Palestinians. The Israel Defense Forces claim that 950 truckloads of aid are ready for international organizations to distribute. Aid agencies, however, said they have been blocked from accessing or delivering critical supplies due to Israeli government restrictions. They also said that hundreds have been killed while trying to access aid in the last 2 months. Meanwhile, the Israeli military announced it was deepening its operations in Gaza City as its forces continue to operate across the Strip.
Senior US, Israeli and Syrian officials are expected to meet on Thursday to discuss the recent violent clashes in southern Syria, according to Axios. It is unclear where the meeting will take place, but it is expected to focus on security arrangements and increasing coordination as well as communication.
The meeting will be chaired by US Syria envoy Tom Barrack, who has been mediating in recent weeks, with officials from both Israel and Syria set to attend. Clashes between the Druze and Bedouin communities, which began July 13th, have killed hundreds and risk derailing Syria's post-war transition. Israel later intervened and launched air attacks in Syria's Damascus, vowing to protect the Druze. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said US President Donald Trump was unhappy with Israel's action and called on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to rectify the situation. This week, hundreds of Bedouin civilians were evacuated from the Druze majority city of Suwaida under US brokered ceasefire. The truce took effect last Sunday, with Syrian government forces deployed to Suwaida's outskirts.
Earlier this week on Wu Says, we take a closer look at Indonesia's deal with the US. What can ASEAN or even Malaysia learn from this? Melissa Idris explores this with Professor Emeritus Dr. Wu Wing Tai.
I ask you then what impression it leaves for the rest of the ASEAN countries. So when we look at how the Indonesian experience of this trade deal and the messages, the subliminal messages that have been sent by Trump and by Prabowo, what should countries like Malaysia take away from this entire negotiation process?
So very good, no higher than 19 now. That's what the first thing we'll have to say, right?
That is the threshold.
No. So our meeting minister Tunku Saifru now has a metric of 19%.
Absolutely.
So the important thing is, before he talked with Trump, he was in Brussels, and he also reached a deal with the Europeans,
right?
And whereby he increased the market access of Indonesia in Europe. They settled up. You know that the Europeans have put on tariffs, if not outright ban, on palm oil from newly deforested areas.
Oh.
So if the palm oil comes from a newly deforested area, the Europeans would not buy it. I think they have come to an agreement on that feature. And that is good for Malaysia, because that means palm oil is now, we have got a metric of what the bargaining could be now. We have got a good standard. But what has happened is he has preserved the principle of free trade. He has already done it with the Europeans, and now, as best as one could get free trade with the United States. And so he has opened the way for ASEAN to be able to take the lead in protecting the global free trade system. And since Indonesia is a member of BRICS, they're going to have free trade with the BRICS countries as well. So it's truly multilateral. I think here is someone who understands the external world and will be a guiding force on the foreign economic policy of the ASEAN region.
Catch the full conversation of this on all AWANI International social media accounts.
Now that report wraps up AWANI International tonight. Stay tuned for our reports on the rivalries, strategies and the shifts behind the power affairs driving the new global order. Visit international.astroawani.com for more. Be sure to follow our social media accounts. I'm Hafiz Marzukhi. Thank you for watching and good night.